there's, definitely stuff that we took from ourselves in high school. Like I was definitely the girl in the English class who complained about what books we had to read.
Yeah, Karen was telling me about her diary in high school, or a list that she found, 10 things I hate about Anthony was this boyfriend of hers. And I wrote down on a piece of paper, 10 things I hate about you, and then parenthetical movie title. And I think that might have been even before we cracked the script or which movie it would go along with. Then we kind of found that note, and then that just became the perfect fit.
Welcome to Script Apart, a podcast about the first draft secrets of great movies. Each episode, we speak to a brilliant screenwriter who's kindly dug out their initial screenplay for what became a beloved movie, discussing what changed, what didn't, and why, from first draft to the big screen. This week, we're joined by the awesome Kirsten Kiwi Smith and Karen McCullah, writers of the high school comedy classic 10 Things I Hate About You. Released in 1999, this teenage reworking of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew had it all. Big laughs, blossoming romance, coming-of-age emotion, and a ridiculously fun soundtrack. The film told the tale of two sisters, a smart but abrasive outcast called Kat, and her younger sibling Bianca, who's banned from dating until her sister does. When a new kid at school called Cam falls for Bianca, a plan is hatched to set Kat up with a mysterious bad boy named Patrick, played by the late, great Heath Ledger. I caught up with Karen and Kiwi to hear about the rebellious fun of turning a classic literary tale into a high school romp, the ahead-of-its-time feminist message they wanted the film to have, and the erotic fiction-loving character that they cut out of the film to cast the story in a whole new light. You're listening to Script Apart, hosted by me, Al Horner, produced by Camille Demek. Karen, Kiwi, such a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you both today?
We're wonderful. Thank you so much for having us.
Glad to hear it. So, guys, 10 Things I Hate About You is one of the definitive high school movies and one of the definitive rom-coms. And you've now had 21 years, I believe it is, of people celebrating the movie and sharing with you guys the ways it's impacted their lives. Across that time, how close have you gotten to working out what it was about this film that connected with people? How do you describe the lightning in a bottle that you captured with this movie?
I think it's the cast, because the cast is just so awesome. And they're just so funny and perfect for their roles. And I think just, being in love in high school is something that's always going to keep happening, no matter, what generation we're in.
Yeah, and I think there's also it was like had its roots in feminism before that became a buzzword. So I feel like a lot of the younger female generation really now connects with that. It had edge to it, those were comments that people have said to us. The tone, the edgy tone of the writing, I think, connected with people, and yeah, really, like Karen said, that the incredible group of actors that came together. The chemistry between them all was epic. So people pick up on that, and just had a bouncy tone, and it comes stolen from one of the greatest storytellers ever, Shakespeare. So,
oh yeah,
right. He gets more credit.
Contribution. Yeah,
yeah. That's well, we'll talk about Shakespeare, but let's go back to the beginning before we do. So, the story that I've heard about how your creative partnership came to be is that Karen, you were out in Denver, and Kiwi, you were in LA. You met for a drink when Karen was in town, and you immediately hit it off so much that you actually began writing an action movie together right there and then on the back of a cocktail napkin. Is that right?
This is true. That is correct. Yeah. I still have the napkins, actually. They're somewhere in my scrapbook.
We like to say that we got pregnant on our first date.
Kirsten likes to say that. I never like to say that.
Oh, really? I think it's so cute.
I don't like the word pregnant in any relation to my body.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was really instant though. We just fueled by margaritas, inspired. We started by talking about Karen had an idea, and we just started populating it with, it would be so great if Fairuza Balk was in it, and Téa Leoni, and we had and Lily Taylor. We just started getting really inspired by the cast, and then kind of describing their characters. We went to many, many locations and just.
Kirsten tried to steal an ottoman at the last location. I remember that. She was like, "Do you think I could get this in my car?" And I was like, "No, I don't think that's a good idea."
Can you remember what the action film was about? What the premise was?
Oh, yeah.
It's so silly. We can't even talk about it. We can't.
Oh, come on.
It's very silly. But it was based on something real, actually weird. A Navy SEAL was trying to pick up my sister in a bar when we were all having a beach weekend. And he ended up back in our room, passed out on the bed. And I was just like, this is a Navy SEAL. This is like a person who's like trained to kill. And he just walked into a room filled with women who can totally take him out. Like, he doesn't know we're not ninjas. Like, I was just like very intrigued by the fact that he was like this person who was like, you know, so lethal. But at that moment, we could have just completely killed him. I thought that was an intriguing premise. And that's kind of what the movie was about.
What if a group of women, all who had various different backstories, were sort of part of a larger operation to bring down these guys?
They were bad, bad domestic terrorists that they were bringing down. It was very silly.
We were super inspired by Long Kiss Goodnight, which was a movie that I think had it been made or just the script had sold. I can't remember, but
I think the script sold for like $4 million, and we were like, we need to write an action movie.
Needless to say, no one cared. But it did launch a collaboration between us that then just began spanning until now. And we wrote that script long distance. And then we decided we wanted to do a teen comedy, which maybe was more in our innate wheelhouse. And so we decided to adapt a classic play. I'll let you get to it, but we ended up writing quite a few, I think 3 scripts total long distance in the early days.
This was the 3rd, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned that you started to turn your attention to a high school set film. High school is such a cross section of society, and it's all these people at this kind of transformative moment in their lives, full of optimism, but full of awkwardness as well. Was that kind of what was drawing you towards making a high school movie, or what were some of the reasons pulling you in that direction?
I think My So-Called Life was on the air at the time, and I became kind of obsessed with just high school drama, I guess. Yeah, so we were definitely deep into teen drama, teen comedy, and we were like, this is what we need to do.
Karen's favorite movie at that time was Grease, and my favorite movie was, I loved all the John Hughes movies, 16 Candles and Breakfast Club, and so those were really, still, they were the core nostalgia favorite movies for us. That so it just felt right that we would do a high school comedy, because that's kind of where our heart was.
And in terms of borrowing a classic literary tale to tell in a contemporary setting, there's a bit of rebellion and naughtiness in the way that the film takes this quote unquote highbrow source material, Shakespeare, and parachutes it into a genre of cinema that at the time was critics were pretty dismissive of and saw as lowbrow. Was that kind of part of the attraction and part of the fun of doing a project like this?
Clueless was based on Emma, so that kind of started the trend. So, but yeah, it was definitely fun to sift through Shakespeare. I still have my big book of Shakespearean sonnets where I went through with the highlighter and tried to pull out words that I liked that I could, throw into teen dialogue, or just, it was a lot of fun to do that, because it really, I guess, hadn't been done at that point. So we felt like we were forging new ground.
That makes sense. And well, not to take things on too personal a tangent, but my mum and dad were both secondary school English teachers, and they actually lit up when I told them that you were going to be coming on the show, because for them, this film was such an amazing tool in creating an inroad to Shakespeare for a lot of students. Was that something kind of you were conscious of wanting to achieve, creating a certain accessibility for young audiences to Shakespeare?
No, but I like that was a byproduct of it.
Yeah, so do I. I was an English major, and it's pretty cool, and that's so lovely that your parents that the movie means something to them as well.
Yeah, if you're ever in Norfolk and want a drink or cup of tea, they owe you one. So
yay. Yeah, I don't think we were like necessarily thinking of ourselves as future, educators, or I think we were just sort of like blindly following, like, okay, we love teen movies, and this adapt a classic approach is something that's working. And so it was pretty innocent. We weren't too calculated about it.
Yeah, because I suppose as well as Clueless, this would have been, I'm trying to work out the timeline, but Baz Luhrmann had that Romeo and Juliet around the same time, right?
Yeah. So it was definitely, it was a trend that we saw was moving upward. And particularly, it's valuable, I think, when you're starting out. It's not like you want to write you want to write things that don't sell or don't make a splash. And we certainly had our action script where we thought we were following a very hot trend that didn't work, but in this case, it seemed like a better fit. And yeah, you want to create something that definitely gets you in the door, that starts your career. I mean, I don't think we had any idea that we would get lucky enough to have it be made, as our first thing. We're balancing like Karen's blind optimism with my very neurotic skepticism.
That sounds like a good yin and yang. What were some of the conversations you guys were having early on that informed your first draft? I mean, there's just so much that's relatable to anyone's experience of high school. I guess you must have had sort of lots of late night sessions kind of trading your own experiences of high school.
Well, there was so much story in the play that, like, at first we were just kind of, I think our first draft was like 200 pages, and then we had to whittle it down to like the parts of the story that were the most important and cutting different subplots and stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's, definitely stuff that we took from ourselves in high school. Like, I was definitely the girl in English class who complained about what books we had to read. Like, that was definitely part of my daily battle with Mrs. Besaw. Always things like Moby Dick and Huck Finn, which I maintain is the Hardy Boys with racism. But I just, I wanted to read more interesting things.
Yeah, and I was really into indie rock. I'm from Seattle, so that whole thing was blossoming at that time, and so that was a really big part of it for me. And when we were talking. Yeah, I remember one of our early drives too, Karen, was like when you had that, you were driving and I was sitting in the passenger seat. I'd flown to Denver to go on a work session. I think we were going to Aspen for our work session.
Oh yeah, we
right?
To Aspen.
Yeah, and Karen
as
was
one does, just drive 7 hours.
We just, right. So we wanted to have always these destination meetups, but yeah, Karen was telling me about her diary in high school, or a list that she found. 10 things I hate about Anthony was this boyfriend of hers, and I wrote down on a piece of paper 10 things I hate about you, and then parenthetical movie title. And I think that might have been even before we'd cracked the script or which movie it would go along with. But then we kind of found that note, and then that just became the perfect fit once we started breaking the story. But we didn't start out writing it with the title in mind, but I think it was like midway through the writing process or the outlining process, it hit us that would be
because I went back and read my diaries from high school to get in that mindset. Mm-hmm. And that's when I found the list. But it was much longer than 10 things. very, very long.
But yeah, and when we outlined the script, we went to Mexico, another destination, and we were like, yes, and we sat on the beach and we had beer, and we just, it was really fun. And I think that kind of carries with us to this day, our process. We haven't really gotten to work together in person since the pandemic, but always we like to be outside. We like to have drinks. We just try to make it as festive as possible.
But yes, we wrote 10 things on the beach. Well, we outlined 10 things on the beach with a bucket of Corona and a notebook. That was our workspace.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit better than a dingy office. But can you tell me, when you talk about some of those subplots that you whittled down and sort of had to take away from this 200-page monster of a script, what were some of those subplots? What were the hard things to cut and the things that you just had to trim?
I think it had something to do, it was with the boys. There was like a whole like masquerade type of subplot that involved the characters that Joseph Gordon-Levitt and David Krumholtz played, I think. So we realized we didn't have enough room for. I think they had there was like some other love interest or something in there. And I think we actually removed one character in total.
Yeah.
I do remember that in one of the early drafts, the song that he sang was I Think I Love You.
Yeah, that's correct.
Then that was used in Scream, so we had to change that. And then Kirsten and I changed it to the Divinal song, Touch Myself. When I think about you, I touch myself.
Yeah.
We thought that was really funny. And then Heath changed it to the song that's in the movie now, because he's like, no, it shouldn't be funny. It should be romantic. And he was completely correct. So I'm glad he changed it.
And that's so funny, because in the script here, it's I Think I Love You. But I just assumed it was a rights issue, as these things often are.
Oh, no. God, so you have an early draft. So that, I think, is the draft that we sold. And then we did another rewrite for Touchstone where we had to add the missing mother. Disney is very fond of missing mothers.
Were the parents still married? Kat and Bianca's parents still married in the draft you have?
In the draft I have, Bianca and Kat's mum is... She's in the script, and it's her in this version who writes the erotic fiction instead of the
I remember
Perkins.
When they made us get rid of the mom, I was like, but we can't get rid of the romance stuff. That's funny. So then we like, the guidance counselor is now a romance writer.
But that's quite interesting because it's such a small change, but it makes the film tick in a different way. Because I was trying to imagine what it would have been like, on screen if the mother was there. And kind of, I guess, like my interpretation over the years was always that the dad is so protective of his daughters because it goes unsaid in the film, but like he's lost his wife at some point, and that's part of his motive. Was that kind of what led to the character being taken out, or what was the reason why there was a mum on the scene, but you ended up cutting her out of the film?
Well, we were told to, but the reason was...
Why did they tell you to do that?
They thought it would explain why Kat was so cranky if the mom had left.
Right, okay.
Didn't understand that like teenage girls are just inherently cranky because they have to deal with teenage boys. We thought that was very clear. But they were like, hey, if her mom's gone, then she's going to have more of a reason to be mad at stuff. And we're like, all right.
Yeah, it was one of the first of many conversations over the years that we've had about making the female characters like more likable or more understandable. I think those conversations are happening less now, but certainly then it was. Although I think it was ultimately a good note that serves the story well.
No, yeah, it worked out. I'm not mad that we had to take it out, but that is how it came about.
So I want to dive a little bit into the draft that I have, which is there's a different opening scene. We open on Padua High School in the daytime, your typical urban, suburban high school in Portland, Oregon. Smarties, skids, preppies, granolas, loners, lovers, the in and out crowd rub sleep out of their eyes and head for the main building. Kat Stratford, 18, pretty, but trying hard not to be, in a baggy granny dress and glasses, balances a cup of coffee and a backpack as she climbs out of her battered baby blue 1975 Dodge Dart. A stray skateboard clips her, causing her to stumble and spill her coffee. The skateboarder responsible comes over to apologize, and Kat ends up grabbing the skateboard, using it to shove him against a car, tip of the skateboard at his throat. Can you tell me about Kat and how you saw that character? It's such a fun, very aggressive.
They made us change that because they were like, she's too scary on page 1. Boys won't like her. And we were like, no, that's kind of the point. Like, what? We loved that scene. I was bummed that they changed it. Yeah.
In the actual film, of course, you come up with like a quicker way to convey who Kat is. So a camera pans down on Seattle, where you ended up locating the movie instead of Portland. We meet a car full of preppy girls kind of bopping to bare naked ladies at a stop sign, and then Kat pulls up next to them in her beat up car, punk music blaring from the stereo, and the first sort of line of music we hear is that lyric, I don't give a damn about my reputation, which is so fitting. And these two contrasting images of teen girlhood and the way that the preppy girls roll their eyes at Kat tell you so much. And it's actually just one example of like the role that music would go on to play in 10 Things. So can you tell me about at what point it's so good, right? Can you tell me a little bit about like at what point it was that music started to take on a pronounced role in the movie? Yeah, as you say, that soundtrack is just insanely fun. And such a part of the fabric.
One of the guys in Bare Naked Ladies used to play in this like Frisbee football league in my neighborhood. And I was like, hey, one of your songs is in one of my movies. And he's like, I don't know what songs were. I just cashed the checks. Like, you didn't even ask me what your name was. And I was like, oh, that must be nice. Okay.
That's the most amazingly LA sentence I've ever heard. A member of the Bare Naked Ladies is in what? My friend's Frisbee?
Frisbee football. In the dog park under the Hollywood sign. It was a quintessential LA moment.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think music was just always, it was really embedded into the fabric of who the characters were, because that 90s indie rock ethos that was going on in the Pacific Northwest at that time, and it had so much rebellion to it. I mean, the granny dresses and the Courtney Love and all that sort of like grunge vibes and indie, Riot Girl vibes. That was really inspiring, and very much always a part of her world and a part of the script from the start. That was something that we always talked about. And we were really pleased too that the Pacific Northwest aspect still was retained, because when we were when it was greenlit, there was talk of maybe relocating it to LA just for budget purposes.
Remember? And they wanted to shoot it in New York at first and change the...
Oh, right. And there was kind of... Right. We were... Cruel Intentions was like, no, you can't do that. It's too Cruel Intentions. I think there was a little talk of LA somewhere as well, but then the director found this high school up in Seattle, which then became, as you know, a whole character unto itself. And so it was great to be able to carry that Pacific Northwest feeling throughout. And to great effect,
That house, that's their house, was for sale last year, I think, for like $2 million or something. Because my friend's mom is a real estate agent up there, and she sent the listing, and it was like the 10 Things house. I thought that was so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, although I suppose if you buy it, you're going to have people outside. It's like someone bought the house from the Goonies, I think. But then they really regretted it because they had people outside, just tourists all day, every day. Yeah. Anyways, the next scene in this draft contrasts the spiky skateboarder assaulting Kat with her sister, who's in the girls' bathroom. So Bianca Stratford is a beautiful sophomore standing facing the mirror, applying lipstick. Her less extraordinary but still cute friend Chastity stands next to her. Bianca asks, "Did you change your hair?" Chastity replies, "No." Bianca says, "You might want to think about it." So can you tell me about Bianca? Was she a tricky character to write at all?
She was a lot of fun to write. It's always fun to write the villain. I mean, she was kind of the villain a little bit. But in terms of the girls, I guess. But it's funny that Chastity is described as less extraordinary, and they cast like the most beautiful girl in the world, Gabrielle Union.
That's interesting to hear you describe her as a villain in a way, because she ticks a certain box, but she also never falls into pantomime. She's popular and materialist, but she's also like quietly smart, and she's not the mean girl that she might have been written as. So how did you arrive at that balance? And what were some of the conversations about who Bianca would be?
She was a little mean to her sister. She was mean to Kat, I think, but we didn't really see her being mean to other people. That's true.
Yeah, I think Larisa Oleynik brought so much humanity and intelligence to the role. I mean, fun side fact, Larisa really wanted to play the role of Kat, and ended up playing Bianca perfectly. And then Larisa, the actress, ended up going to Sarah Lawrence for college after. I think kind of she was like going to live the Kat role, even if she didn't play her in this movie, which I always thought was really sweet.
And we then meet Cameron. He's in the school guidance counselor's office. It's his first day. You describe him as being clean-cut, easygoing senior with an open farm boy face. who sits facing Miss Perky, an impossibly cheery guidance counselor. Miss Perky says, "I'm sure you won't find Padua any different than your old school. Same little asswipe motherfuckers everywhere."
So that scene was shot in the movie, but then because you get one fuck and it has to be a non-sexual fuck in a PG-13 movie. So we thought, great, we can say motherfuckers, but apparently there's a motherfucker rule. So they had to change motherfucker to shit for brains and like CGI her mouth. But that was before CGI was really good. So if you watch that scene again, her lips and the sound don't match.
I'm going to look out for that next time.
She had to re-record shit for brains instead of motherfuckers. But we were like, what has the same number of syllables? That's a funny cuss word. We're like, motherfucker, shit, or brain. It was very studious work that day that we had to figure that out.
And how did you approach Cameron? Who was that character?
Just like the quintessential nice guy role, pretty much.
Like the farm boy face is a really funny thing. I don't remember that.
God, we like really described our characters more back then. Right. Now we're just like Cameron, 18, like
right, friendly. We should really go back and learn from these drafts. Thank you.
I know. I'm gonna read it for you. We're gonna get that skateboard scene in a future movie somewhere. Someone's gonna.
But now I know why Joe Gordon Levitt, he wanted to meet with us before signing on to the movie and talk about the character in more detail, so he could get a handle on who he was before he committed. He was the first actor to join the cast, and yeah, now I know, because he's like, "Am I a farm boy? I mean, this is how I see myself." But yeah, we had a dinner with him and the producers, and I think I said something like, "You're like the Luke Skywalker of the movie."
Yeah, and I was just like, "No, that's not a thing. That's not." No.
He did it, Karen. It worked.
He did it. I mean, you told him on that, but it was not true. Like, I guess Luke Skywalker was a farm boy, right? Didn't his?
He was, yeah.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen Star Wars.
So as Cameron's coming out of the guidance counselor's office, he runs into Patrick Verona, a sullen-looking badass senior who waits outside. He obviously is going to be another of the key characters in the movie. And of course, the character was made iconic by the late, great Heath Ledger. Can you tell me about writing this character and, the way that Heath brought Patrick to life so brilliantly? Well,
when he was cast, we changed the character to someone who's grown up in Australia because he wasn't doing an American accent at that point.
Yeah.
And it kind of, as Kirsten said, my favorite movie is Grease. So all of a sudden he became like the Sandy from Grease. It's very exciting. But at first, I think, didn't he audition to play Joey Donner first, the model? And then they were like, hey, maybe we should be Patrick.
I actually knew him before he was cast, and he came to LA off of a TV show, moved in with a friend of mine, and he had blonde hair. So I think I was seeing him like Cameron, because he was like the new guy with blonde hair. He had more of that farm boy look, I guess. Yeah. And so I was like, he'd gotten the script from his agents, and I was like, what do you think for Cameron? He's like, no, I am Petruchio. But said in a really badass, charming way. And I was like, okay, yes, sir. He was really already just super confident and knew exactly who he was and what he wanted to do creatively. And when he auditioned, Karen, remember we saw the tape, and he showed up at the audition wearing like a white
suit, yeah,
with like a black button up underneath and button up shirt. And I mean, none of the other guys auditioning were anywhere close to that. It just was such a radical, cool move, showing up wearing that suit. And
he always seemed like way older than his years to me. I remember worrying that he was going to look so much older than the other kids, even though he was younger, because he had such like a manly adult presence about him. Mm-hmm. Like when we hung out with him, it didn't feel like we were hanging out with a teenage kid. It felt like we were hanging out with a peer. Mm-hmm. And we were like, late 20s. I think I was like 30 at the time, 31. So it just felt like we were hanging out with a contemporary, not like a kid, and he just was an old soul that way. So I think that he brought a lot of that presence to the character, making him more soulful and not just a badass.
And it was also cool because we got to have conversations with him probably about the script that were sort of as friends, because they were the part of the process. Sometimes is like they usually keep the writers away from the actors until a certain point in the process, but we got to talk to him about what he was thinking as we were doing our own polish for the studio. So that was really, and his ideas were great, and that was really fun to be able to like develop it a little bit with him.
And you mentioned there that Cameron is, of course, like the new kid at school. It's like a cool expositional tool, I guess, because him being new allows Michael, who you describe as a lanky, brainy senior, who will either end up a politician or a game show host.
God damn, we were good at this.
No.
Michael takes them on like a sort of tour of the school and its different like cliques. So we meet the basic beautiful people, the cowboys, who Michael says jack off to Clint Eastwood. We meet the coffee kids, very edgy, don't make any sudden movements around them. And finally, of course, the white rastas, who I love. And it's at this point that Cameron stops listening as Bianca walks by and we go into slow motion. Pure and perfect, she passes Cameron and Michael without a look. Cameron is smitten. Bianca Stratford, sophomore, don't even think about it, warns Michael. Why not? Asks Cameron. I can start with your haircut, but it doesn't matter, replies Michael. She's not allowed to date until her older sister does, and that's an impossibility. So that's something different in this draft as well, because I think by the shooting draft, you decided that we need to see the girl's father establish that rule rather than introduce it right away. Can you remember the decision-making process behind that?
I don't remember it, but it was a good one because it's better for it to come from the dad.
I guess it's
cool. Well, we definitely changed him into an obstetrician to make him more against the girls dating, because he was, delivering babies to teen girls all day. Yeah. So he didn't want that to be his daughter's fate. So that was an ad to make that role seem more organic. But yeah, that's funny. I didn't remember that we had Michael stating it right up front.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I do remember, though, that the cowboys, people were just like, what school has cowboys? But I was living in Denver at the time. And when we were writing this, I would park outside of the local high school in Littleton, Colorado, and watch the kids just to see what cliques there were. So that's where the cowboys and the white Rastas came from. There's a lot of white Rastas living in Telluride, Colorado, the Trustafarians.
And then he was taken to jail.
There was what?
I said, and then you were taken to jail for lurking outside of high school.
Yeah, I was. I'm very lucky that I never got asked any questions. Hi, just writing a movie. It's fine. Yeah.
Let's talk Joey, who is frighteningly recognizable as a character. I think everyone went to school with a Joey. We get a glimpse of him here showing off to his friends, like schmoozing girls with, I think what Cameron describes as a shit-eating grin. How did you kind of go about constructing that character and making him the antagonist, if you like?
We just thought he was funny, I think.
and the modeling thing just seemed like a perfect narcissistic touch.
And the actor who plays that role is literally the nicest, sweetest guy in the world. So he's like, it's just so fun to watch him play this villain because he is like the polar opposite of that.
There's another sort of change in this draft here where, as a plan is hatched to get Cameron closer to Bianca, Cameron in this version already knows French. His mum's Canadian. But in the final movie, he's like, well, I don't know French, but, sort of blag it, basically. Was that just kind of a decision to kind of ramp up the romance? And I guess because it's funnier as well.
Yeah.
That was probably either Joe or the director made that change, I would imagine. Probably Joe, just because it makes him, more eager to be with her if he's having to learn a whole language to pretend to be her tutor.
We then have a scene kind of glimpsing into Kat and Bianca's home life. Making the father Walter, as we mentioned, a doctor delivering babies is the perfect explanation for his very guarded approach to his two daughters. Walter's also an absolute riot. He gets so many great lines. But yeah, you start to sort of assemble the plot and kind of get all the pieces, in front of you here. Bianca has her French lesson with Cameron, and Cameron asks Bianca out, but Bianca, you get the impression, kind of senses an opportunity. I'm at the mercy of a particularly hideous breed of loser, my sister. I can't date until she does. The problem is she's completely antisocial. She used to be really popular when she started high school. Then it was like she just got sick of it or something. And here's where all the cogs start to turn in terms of a plot. So Bianca's going to get Cameron to find Kat a boyfriend. Cameron's going to use Joey to fund the operation. Joey's going to pay Patrick to date Kat, and so on and so forth. Was assembling all that really fun, or was it quite tricky? Because you got quite a lot of moving pieces there.
It was fun. It's always nice
really
to have
fun.
moving pieces. The more moving pieces, the better.
Yeah, Will really he gifted us with a lot of great machinations, as you say. Yeah.
And how much of this, for people who aren't who maybe weren't paying attention in secondary school as much as they should have been, how much of that bulk of the sort of plot was taken directly from Taming the Shrew, and how much were you sort of playing around fast and loose with?
That's a hard question.
I know. Maybe I think most like 80% in terms of all those setups, for sure, of everyone having their own agenda and all the wagers and the trickery started. I felt like that was that's
definitely like a hallmark of Shakespeare, to have all those people. Duplicity.
And we soon get to Kat and Patrick meeting. You've been dropping all these rumors that Patrick killed a guy in Alcatraz and things like that, and was out of school last year making pornos. You then have this great first interaction. Patrick approaches Kat on the athletics field. Hey, girly. Kat stops and turns slowly to look at him. Patrick continues, I mean, woman, how are you doing? Kat smiles brightly, sweating like a pig, actually. And yourself? Patrick replies, there's a way to get a guy's attention. He then tries to seduce her, offering to pick her up on Friday night and take you to places you've never been before and back. Kat replies, like where? The 7-Eleven on Burnside? So what did you need to set up with these characters in terms of how their relationship would unfold, and how, they're both such icy personalities to begin with, but you needed to get them to a place where, they warm up and some of that iciness thaws a little bit?
I mean, it was mostly, setting up that she wasn't going to fall for all of his normal tricks that he might use on other girls. Like, she wasn't having it. So it was fun to play that repulsion for a while. And then when they both decide to get real with each other, then that's when the attraction grows.
I mean, he had no real idea about who she was or what she was going to respond to. So he's sort of throwing out some things that, maybe his usual tricks, but might also just be things he's like, I'll try this, why not?
And were there any other kind of like movie inspirations or rom-com inspirations that you were looking to as you wrote that romance?
Yeah, I mean, I've right. I think we talked a lot of Jordan Catalano.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I mean, I think for me it was a little bit of I love Breakfast Club, John Hughes's movie, and that kind of felt like he did really fun things with a Judd Nelson and Molly Ringwald character, and yeah, I mean, 16 Candles is a classic, and Some Kind of Wonderful, and I just gobbled all those movies up. So he always managed to get that really great teen authenticity with, real kind of attitude from his character. So that was inspiring.
And as we touched on a little bit earlier, the thing that kind of really finally wins Kat over is that moment where Patrick sings to win her back, performing on the bleachers. I mean, that scene has become so iconic and is probably like the best known out of the entire film. Can you remember what it was like when you saw the film for the first time and it got to that scene? It's still, I mean, even for me, it's just like so fun and so, kind of spine tingling to watch. What was it like for you guys when you first saw the film and saw that scene?
Where were we, Karen? I think probably, was it at that test screening in the...
We were on my couch, I think. I think we watched it on dailies and on video they sent us.
I mean, his movies were so great. And I mean, it was just a knockout moment. I mean, we knew he was going to deliver it incredibly, but like, yeah, seeing it all together, it was
I think we were shocked that he could sing so well.
Yeah.
Like we had no idea he could sing. We're like, whoa, okay.
And that he built in all those little like dance flourishes and then embedded with this physical comedy was, Yeah.
Just chasing the cops around and spanking them on the butt.
Right.
Yeah, he definitely ad-libbed all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think in the script we were just like, Patrick sings, like all the rest of the town.
Well, you probably know, what does the script say?
Yeah, what does
This is like getting a test on our own thing that we wrote 20 years ago. I hope we're passing. Jeez.
23 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Good grades so far. Don't worry.
Okay.
So
what does it say in the script for that description?
Well, actually, this whole section you didn't write as being on the bleachers.
No, I think it was in the cafeteria or something.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Actually, he's outside Kat's English class.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I can understand why he switched it to bleachers. I guess cinematically even.
Yeah, that location had that, just that magical stadium. It's called Stadium High School. So it was made great use of it.
Adding the marching band in was like a fun addition.
And then from there, their relationship really blossoms and they share that kiss after that paintball game. Patrick has fallen for Kat, and then it all goes horribly wrong. At the dance, Kat finds out that Joey had initially paid him to take her out. You were paid to take me out by the one person I truly hate. I knew it was a setup. Patrick insists it wasn't like that. Kat says, really? What was it, like a down payment now, then a bonus for sleeping with me? And that line, you're so not who I thought you were, something about Julia's performance there just crushes me every time. All this leads to that pivotal moment of the film that we kind of touched on earlier, the titular moment of the movie, Kat's poem. And Karen, did you say there was a real life version of that poem? You had written this poem, but maybe you hadn't read it out in class, or had you?
Kirsten wrote it for the movie. Yeah, it wasn't in existence.
Yeah, I was a poet in during college and so on and so forth. But yeah, it was kind of the perfect combination of Karen's title and this poem coming together, and Julia's performance, which really surprised us. I don't think either of us imagined that she was going to cry. And when she did, it was like, oh, this is so good. And that was, I think, take one.
Yeah,
wow.
There's that beautiful reaction shot of Heath watching her read the poem. That's my favorite shot of him in the whole movie. So good.
And then, of course, Patrick buys her a Fender Strat to help her start her band and leaves it on the front seat of her car. And it kind of melts her heart. They kiss. And the film ends in this draft with all the characters at a barbecue looking at their yearbook. Yeah, I promise. But of course, in the actual film, there's this amazing ending where the camera kind of pulls out on the characters and Letters for Cleo are performing on the top of the school, which is cool. Can you remember much about that barbecue ending?
No.
I didn't remember it at all.
Wait, will you read it to us?
Do I have it in front of me?
Oh, it's okay. Maybe it wasn't. It might not be that good. Maybe not.
Yeah, totally.
Karen and I always have a funny issue with our endings. I mean, I think all writers struggle. Part of it is because you focus so much energy on the first, 100 pages. I think you get a little worn out when you get to the end, and everything else is much more carefully honed. You've read it hundreds of times. At the end, you're kind of looking at maybe like a third draft or something like that, as opposed to 100th draft. But also we always have this habit of like creating a kind of a parade where, of people, like a group setting where everyone's together and it's all going to be this perfect wrap up. And then and
Kirsten always likes every character to hook up with another character. Like someone who had one line in the fucking movie. Kirsten's like, at the party at the end, he needs to hook up with that one. I'm like, oh my God, no, not again. Hilarious. Every script is always somebody. She's just like, these two should be a couple. I'm like, no, they don't need to be a couple. Yeah.
I think it's from some kind of wonderful, that John Hughes movie where like the real mean girl at the end at the party is like makes eyes across the room with like the frizzy haired biker dude. And it's just like, oh, my heart just sang when I saw that. Like Odd Couple pairings at the end is just a little cherry on top. Sometimes she lets me do it. Other times I don't win this battle.
Kirsten's favorite trick is the Odd Couple pairings. Always. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes I'm not opposed, but like sometimes I'm like, the bus driver does not need to come back in this scene. No.
Hey, bus drivers deserve love too, guys.
Yes, thank you, Al.
So, what about the film makes you proud in terms of the message that it sent and what it communicated about the rules you don't have to follow as a kid, and in particular as a young woman growing up in the world? I guess Cat was kind of definitely my first exposure, I think, to like a type of girl who, true to the Joan Jett song at the beginning, doesn't give a damn about her reputation. And yeah, you mentioned sort of like the feminist sort of undercurrent of the film. Yeah,
I mean, I'm really proud of that we kind of we put that out there, and that it still resonates, and that it was. I mean, we talked to a lot of really, really strong, inspiring young women who talk about seeing the movie in their younger years and how much it meant to them, and that feels super moving. And yeah, I mean, just I think we just feel really proud of the whole thing. We feel proud to have been a part of, working with those actors at that moment in their career, and obviously being part of a girl power movement and an empowerment movement and a feminist movement when there weren't really those phrases for it.
Yeah, just portraying a character that, shows girls that they don't have to always go with the flow. You can be your own person and, be valued.
And did you have to fight to be able to do that? Was there any kind of studio pushback, or was it one of those like lovely environments where people actually let you do this thing that deserves to be on screen, where you are sort of spreading that much more positive message and like realistic representation?
Well, like we said, the opening scene was changed because they thought that made her too mean. But I mean, I'm sure there were moments along the way that they were just like, well, you might have gone a little too far here, ladies. But I think for the most part, the character retains the spirit of what we intended, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there were hiccups along the way of like the director having, wanting to futz with the dialogue a lot, but we definitely had to fight in those situations, but we had really supportive producer Andrew Lazar and our studio executive Mark Varadian were like loved the script so much, and it was one of the few scripts that got greenlit without a director attached or any kind of cast attached. That's unusual. It was unusual then and unusual today. So they wanted to make sure that everything that was there in the script that they read, that they bought, that we wrote was retained. So that was really lovely.
And where do you see 10 Things mark today? Do you see its influence when you like switch on Netflix and turn on certain films and programs?
There was a movie called To All the Boys I Loved Before that everyone said, oh my gosh, it's so much like 10 Things. So that I feel like has the spirit of that in there. But that's probably the only recent one. I'm glad that these movies are back. I mean, it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah. Do you hope that it opened doors for a different type of teen movie with, as we've talked about, like a more feminist message?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think it has. I hope it has, and that it will continue to.
If you were writing the film today, is there anything you'd do differently?
The boob
Obviously, we probably couldn't. Oh, the boob flash?
That would not be there.
Yeah.
Well, but the way we wrote it, I always pictured it like she was standing in the doorway and just flashed him for a second. But then the way it was directed, she's standing right inches away from him, holding her shirt up for like a full minute. And it's just, that one gives me the heebie-jeebies when I see it. But so we would definitely change that.
That makes sense. I was expecting you just to say there'd be less bare naked ladies in the soundtrack. But
I love the bare naked ladies.
Hey, 1 week is a jam. And speaking of writing today, I mean, obviously you guys since then have worked on so many other amazing projects. Can you tell me what you've been working on recently and what's maybe coming up?
We have been working on a script for Warner Brothers during the pandemic.
It's called 10.
Yes.
Which is kind of a funny... It's kind of
that's true.
A funny callback to where we started.
Throwing that number in the title of scripts.
Yeah, I did a teen show based on a book that I wrote on Netflix called Trinkets.
And I love it.
Yeah, and you do? Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
And we got some 10 Things. We got 10 Things cast member cameos in there for the friends and fans of Larisa and Andrew Keegan. So that's what was really, really sweet. Andrew came in to play that part, and he was just, I think it was cool for him to come into an ensemble of teenagers and in a different place in life. And he was really energized by it. And it brought him back to the 10 Things days a little, because we shot in Portland. So that was kind of...
I remember when we shot 10 Things, Andrew had been on Seventh Heaven, I think, a TV show. And there were little girls. There were like 8-year-old girls waiting to get his autograph after shooting every day. They would stand there with their moms and they would weep when they saw him. They were just like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over Andrew. It was so funny to watch. I loved it. But
yeah, big time teen heartthrob.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing 10, guys. And also, I am going to need you to promise me right here and now, if you ever do make that Navy SEAL action film, we have to do Script Apart again about that, okay? I need your promise on that.
All right, deal.
We have to find it and send it to you just for your amusement.
on the cocktail napkin, or?
No, we actually did write it on paper at one point.
Well, I'd love to read it. Guys, this was so much fun. Thanks so much for coming on Script Apart.
Thank you, Al. It was a blast. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to Script Apart, hosted by me, Al Horner, produced by Kamil Demek, with music from Stefan Bindley-Taylor. Get in touch. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, or you can email us, thescriptapartpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.